Hello, and you're very welcome to the Turn End podcast. It's episode 48. Well, it's the morning after the night before, where Dundalk are strangely still within a European hunt. How this has happened, I don't know. But to pick our way through last night's game and the current situation, I suppose we find ourselves, we have Gally and Donal. Gents, thanks for dropping in at these four. Don't I like the optimism already. Passport at hand. Passport at hand.
COVID cert ready. I'm ready to go.
An unusual one for us, lads. It's the next day and we can actually consider what happened and sleep on it before coming with our normal anguish or whatever we have on these podcasts. But look, we were all at the match last night. So Don, look, I'll start with you. What was your take on the match?
It's kind of a strange situation to be in, isn't it? Where like 2 weeks ago we're thinking relegation playoff, we're thinking scrapping for every single point we can possibly get, and then you go into yesterday's game and you're looking at the draw out of Bows result, being like, if this goes the right way and we win this one, we're dusting off the passports. But the game itself, like, was pretty much what you would have imagined playing at home to Longford. They were set up to obviously just defend. They were counter-attacking with two players, sometimes possibly three if they were adventurous. But yeah, it was just a struggle, and it was always just a case of like, you need to be patient. They created a couple of chances, and then before the proper tension could set in the second half, the goal, Hooben's goal, just pretty much eased everybody's fears and everything. So it was pretty much what you would have expected, what we should have done against Longford every time we played them, but it took until the fourth time to get it done. But it was what it was, I guess.
Yeah, I think, Gally, that's just it. Like, you when you consider Longford's position and you'd like to think you'd be taking more points off them this year, but that probably sums up our season this year more than anything, that it took us to the last round of games to play Longford to finally get 3 points off them. And that's probably no discredit to them either. At times they were the far better team too.
Yeah, well, like the first half, like that was my first game back. So that was my game back after COVID. Like the first, it was, I don't even want more. Slow was probably the best way to put the first half. There was nothing happening. We played it way. Like, what I noticed about Longford is, and I don't know whether this is something to take away. If Kieran Burke's listening, he might be not happy with it. But the problem they have is they play great. They actually play really good. They play really well in the field. They're one of the fastest teams I think I've seen in a long time. Like they're almost like a young Dundalk team what Kenny would have had years ago. The problem with they can't finish their dinner, so they can't seem to get the ball from the midfield to the striker. Now, I don't know if that's a problem they've had all season. I haven't seen them a lot playing, but every time in the final third, they can't see the pass. So they can't. Even if it's the only pass that's on, they literally cannot see it. The midfielder cannot pick out the player. It doesn't know, even though they're there. Now, added that into their frailties at the back, if they could probably get that right, like, it's probably harsh on them where they finish. Now, they were probably always going to finish bottom, but when they finish so far down, that final pass could be their undoing for the whole season. I know they conceded late goals. Like, overall, like the funny thing is with that team, they'll probably get picked apart, and most of them will stay in the Premier Division. Because their left back, I just have his name, Kirk, and Grimes. Now, I know Grimes came off early in the second half, but they would get a game for most clubs in the Premier League. Now, the midfielder, there's a red hair for, I can't think of his name, 14. He would be another one. Now, Longford fans are probably saying that all season. But if they had have picked the pass, because their striker had the running of Andy Boyle all night, they just can't find the pass. And it's not that they're not good enough to pass it. They don't actually see it. So it played right into Dundalk hands. Like, first half was all. We came out in the second half. I don't know if there was anything different said at half time. But I mean, Dundalk, it was just a different game. Dundalk were on a different level. Like I know we've mentioned it before, Hooben and Murray as a duo were just like, it was ridiculous. It was crazy. Like, it was like when we were on it years ago, Macmillan had that run of goals with McElhenney. It was like that. Like the two of them just worked so well. I think Pat Hoban was dropping into midfield for the ball. I don't know if it was out of just pure frustration or just that actually that was his function for the night. but they were excellent. I mean, like the second half was just a different ball game. I mean, when you get 2 goals, one off the bar, keeper doesn't stop. It's basically a decent night, but you don't stop them. You don't stop Murray's shot either. It's hit the bar and gone across, hit the or the post and gone in.
Posting in, yeah.
Yeah, they were excellent. They have Longford never really got going at all. I mean, if that's their level, then that's why they've finished up with so few points. But they can play. I mean, if they put their mind to it, they're probably maybe 2 or 3 players short. I mean, a decent team. But it was second half was perfect. Now, it is Longford, but I mean, it's perfect timing for us. It's a perfect result to get at this time of the season, and definitely earned it. It probably should have been. I wouldn't say it probably should have been 5 or 6, but it probably definitely should have been 3-0. I mean, we definitely were 3 or 4 maybe. But yeah, second half was first half. You just write it off. It was like a stinker. There's no other way of putting it.
And I think, Donald, the only thing about the first half of note was, Greg Sloggett coming off as well. I think that's unfortunate. It seemed to be like a pull up or something, because it seemed to be a fairly swift one. It was like, oh, where's Greg Sloggett? Oh, he's going off. Okay, what happened there? I wonder. And with a fair few buzzards or sharks, let's just say, sniffing around and circling in Oriel Park last night. I don't know if that's good or bad for us.
Yeah, it's like I saw a few shopping trolleys pull up before the game.
Self-service or?
No, one of them had a yellow reg on it, so I'm pretty sure I know whose shopping trolley that was. No, the injury thing was interesting because obviously he's only after coming back from injury. They have a medical department there. I don't know who it is, but they have, because Garth was out warming up with the strength and conditioning coach before the game. So we have a strength and conditioning coach and physios and everything, but you're obviously looking at things like that. Like, should somebody have told him not to play? Is he, who's signed it? All that kind of stuff. Just questions about the medical department in general. But I don't know. Like, I think he's suspended for the last game as well, Greg Sloggett. So that's him done. Like, we might never see Greg Sloggett in a Dundalk jersey ever again. That might have been it.
Yeah.
And the reality of situation.
There's a dose of reality, lads, when we do these in the AM rather than the PM. What's that all about?
There's no whiskey. I literally can't drink this. Well, I can't. Oh, well, I could drink this earlier. I'm also at work, so I hope nobody from work is watching.
Well, a live broadcast across social media is never good for work, is it?
Yeah, just don't tag me in this one. But yeah, so Sloggett going off is like, right, you're probably the end of his season, maybe the end of his time with the club. And then, like, when Sam Stanton comes on, Sam Stanton's been brilliant all season. And he'd be one of the ones that you're like, they have to, well, look, we're saying that all season about different players, but he'd definitely be one of the ones you'd be looking at to keep. But it was a little bit, there was plenty of jokes before the game about who was in attendance and who they'd be looking at, and how well dressed some of them were.
Very dapper.
That was Gally's highlight of the night, just watching the fashion around. I think of
he was too well dressed. He wasn't just a spectator last night, I don't think.
We'll get to the rest of these. I was going to say what will I address it as, and I was thinking, well, Donald's already done a blog called Rumors, so I don't know, was there a second Rumors album by any chance? Because
remastered.
There you go. Yeah,
part 3 now, the next one, because I've already about the Rumors, so we'll be on to the third one.
One thing I wasn't expecting was actually comments from people today. So actually, Daniel Sexton put in a couple of comments there, and he actually brings up a good point. You were just talking about Sloggett, and then you will have to also realise you're not going to see Fats again in a Dundalk jersey, ? Over Garth, now Sloggett. There's going to be an emotional night come, the 19th, Friday the 19th, when we realise, wait, how many of these players are we actually going to see again in a Dundalk shirt? And is this, at times this year we talked about, is this the end of a a real strong legacy for Dundalk of European football consistently and winning things. There's a real curtains coming down on something come that date. But look, we'll see what position it comes. Other results might leave it that there's still quite a lot to play. Gally, you touched on it already. Just, you know, the second half display was night and day compared to the first half. But, you know, Pat Hooben's header, you can't get much more inch perfect than that. Like you can't criticize anything from the Longford side of keeping or anything like that for the goal. It's just pinpoint header in off it. It must be a nice feeling from a striker because you hear that ping off the crossbar bouncing up and down the tud of it. It's a nice feeling.
And it was whipped in a pace as well. I mean, it was like the pace on it. Any kind of touch would have done. But I was like, not that I feel sorry for the goalkeeper, but Stacey had a decent night. I mean, he's not the worst in the league. He's a fantastic haircut, lovely ponytail, like Stephen Seagal. Well,
it's a football podcast, not fashion. Now I don't know what
you're no keeper saves those. I mean, it's whipped in that fast. It's hit the underside of the crossbar. Like it happened that fast. If you were doing anything, like if you blinked, you would have missed it. Literally, like if you were doing anything else, you wouldn't have seen the goal last night. But that was just the start. That was straight after kickoff in the second half, and that from then it was. I won't say relentless like last week, but I mean it only looked like one winner. I mean, like I said, if Longford had someone like. For instance, if Sean Murray plays for Longford last night, they definitely would have got a goal. Or would have. They just have nobody with that foresight to see down the field in the final third. Now it looked like that at the pitch. I don't know what it looked like on camera, but it's they move really well. They just don't have that little bit of quality in midfield to see passes. But the goal from the Dundalk, I mean, it's and like Murray's, and then we go on to the section. Not to move on to the second one straight away, but for the build up to it as well, his stat was involved and. It's a cracking strike. You don't save them. Two keepers don't save it. It's hit that far into the corner. Like it actually looked like it hit the post without, but it rolled across. It was inch perfect. It was a fantastic strike. And like the run, the form that he's in, somebody sign him up. So like if the Dog don't offer him a contract now, like Damien Duff was in the stand last night, Rory Higgins was in the stand last night. Like these boys will be all over him. They might not suit him to go to Talca Park, but I mean, if you've got an extra bit of money at the club and you've got one star player, Sean Murray's that player at the minute. I mean, just sensational last night.
Donald, I'll give you the easiest job ever. We can wax lyrical about Sean Murray once more in that number 10 role, popping up, right time, right place, burst the pace into the box and that finish. It's just, if we don't hold on to him next year, I'd hate to see him in another shirt.
Yeah, and I think we've said this a few times as well. Like the way Hooben plays and the way Duffy plays, it just suits him right down to the ground. To have two boys breaking a pace and then he makes the runs into the box. Like the goal was absolutely fantastic. The only problem with the goal was that it does that weird thing where when it hits the post and you can't tell if it's gone in, so everybody's up and then is it? Yeah.
It seemed like it seemed forever. It seemed about 3-4 seconds before it actually hit the net. It was crazy, yeah.
I did enjoy the Dara Leahy running into the net to get the ball and put it back on the center. Like he's the only one on the pitch that was like, we need goals, lads. This could come down to goal difference.
Maybe the rise on him and he wanted to show commitment.
But yeah, it was just that, like on the goal difference thing. We could be like, we was chatting about this last night. We could be in a really, really strange situation in the last game where if it came down to goals and Mickey Duffy is playing for Dundalk to try and knock Derry out of a European spot.
It's crazy.
I was sitting with the abacus last night trying to work out all these goal difference, and I was like, well, this could come down to maybe 3 goals to Derry. And I said, imagine we're 2-0 up, there's a free kick on the edge of the box, and Duffy goes to hit it. Like, I'm sorry, if I was Sean Murray, I'd say, step over for a second, I need to guarantee this. Because he'd be thinking, am I going to bang over, put in a goal to put out my current, to benefit my current employers, but not my future employers, and what I could have for the next 3 to 4
at the Brandywell at the Rangwood Pride Stadium for next year. Where do you go with that?
Yeah,
I didn't debate. Would you like if he wasn't the player he was, they'd probably debate playing him. Again, you can't not play him.
But you looked at him last night. Last night, I'd say some of those Longford players are still spinning because he was just constantly in and around behind him, getting to the byline, cutting it back. his burst of pace at times, he's just like, oh, he'd be a nightmare to play against, which we will have to figure out. Next, oh God.
Domigan can handle him if he signs next year. It'll be grand. Domigan can handle him.
Yeah.
And that another player last night, a great game. Like, to me, I still think he can play midfield. If we're looking, like, I would actually go and get a right back and play Domigan central part. I think he's unbelievable on the ball. His passing range with both feet is frightening. Like, he's put a ball 40 yards across the field last night with his left peg, and then his right one. It was just ridiculous. It's such an underrated footballer. Like, players like that are going to be on the radar, contract or no contract. But another,
especially players that can play in multiple positions as well.
Yeah,
like you just love them because you know that they can fit into whatever system you want to play, and they're comfortable enough that they know how to play, more centrally, further out wide, or defensively minded, or forward thinking. So they're a real godsend to have, especially when you think of how we've had to patch up sides this year too.
Just when you say that, just something I noticed last night. For all the signings when we patched these clubs together and these teams together, the only player that wasn't at the club last year that played last night. So all the signings we've had was Cherry. The rest are actually at the club last. So it just goes to show the Vinny's come in and he's got these, this squad together, and we're back to where we started with the originals. And that's not to be slight on the players that come in, but all the players we signed, they've almost added nothing at the minute. Do you know, like, I mean, it's come back down to these lads, these warriors out there who've been at the club for so long, won leagues, that are now getting us out of this hole that we're in. Like, only Cherry was the only player last night at the start of the match that wasn't at the club last season. So, like, it's a credit to the boys for just hanging in there and one game to go. Look, it's all to play for. You hope the goal difference doesn't come into it. It's going to be an absolute panic. I don't know how we're going to do a podcast next Friday week. But,
well, Donald's going to send out whiskey to us all, and this is how we're doing it.
Look, it sets it up nicely. It sets it up like
to be in this, to be even considering this, lads. We, for a while we thought like the victory last night seals us away from the relegation. That's done and dusted. We can't be pulled into that quagmire anymore. You now think, how are we still have an outside, even though it's an outside chance, it's still a chance, and it's something for us to kind of just hold on to, that small sliver for pending on other things to happen. But you just think we should have been, as poor as we've been, and people have talked about the level this year within the league, but it says a lot that we've had probably our worst season in a long time, and yet we still have this small little outside chance of European football. Is crazy. Don't look, Gally's after throwing out a possible couple of titles of blogs there for me. We got the originals, we got Warriors. I've got visions of the Warriors fucking movie headline coming through here, and Gally's going to be up and down the railings going, Warriors come out and play. But to talk about Pat Hoobin with another goal, because Daniel Sexton's back in again, saying that's another two more goals he needs now for a record amount of league goals. It's unbelievable. He'd be another one. You'd be, he's a player, if he doesn't stay with us into next year, that he's only going to strengthen another team. And for him to leave without that record would be heartbreaking too, because it'll be a long time till we see somebody perform to these levels again. But at the same time, is that enough for him to stay? I don't know.
Yeah, it'd be a nice little carrot if you're approaching him with a contract and saying, do you want to sign? And if you score a couple more goals, you're going to get to be, well, he's already like a legendary Dundalk goal scorer, but could be
in the history books
goal scorer. Yeah. And I did think yesterday, like, I don't know if you lads thought the same, but there was a point in time yesterday, I think he wanted the ball played in front of him when someone played it behind him or whatever. And I remember looking at him and going, you must be an absolute nightmare to play with sometimes, because he just seems like he's on, like, just on the edge of erupting all the time, and if something doesn't go his way, he's about to erupt. Well, like, obviously he's a good teammate as well, don't get me wrong, but there are definitely some times where you just have to turn away from him and just not look at him, because he's throwing the hands up and screaming and putting his hands out in front of him and being like, put it here. And he just seems like he's a character, I guess. But he's been the Warrior thing. Like, he's been absolutely incredible for the last couple of months. And there was a big difference when he wasn't in the team. I know when Davy Mack went in and he was obviously wasn't fit and everything, but there was a huge difference. Like, he's been incredibly important in this like run of results. And the other thing too is if he did sign for somebody else and he played against us, how motivated he'd be. Like, he wouldn't need any extra motivation, but Jesus, can you imagine him against us? I actually just don't want. It's fair to see. Yeah. I know we're playing against Duffy next season. I really, really don't want to play against Hubin as well. That would be really, really tough to take, I think. Obviously, depending on who he signs for, because he could make some atrocious decisions, or one massive atrocious decision. But I don't want to see him in a different jersey next season.
No, exactly. Donald, are you okay for time still, or?
I'm just gonna slip off here and go back to cool. Go back to my day job.
Perfect. Yeah. Well, look, thanks for popping on, Donald. We appreciate that, and we've got multiple titles now for the blog this week, so that's sorted at least.
You can have it for free. You can have it for nothing.
That's the hardest.
He didn't know there was a charge coming, so that's more of a surprise.
All right, guys.
Perfect. Thanks, Donald. Gally, I think, like you said, as soon as you walk through the gates last night of Oriel Park, the rumour mill is in full flow. Last night with individuals that's there, people are telling you, this and that, they're done deals, it's this and that. This ownership seemed to take a massive step in the past. It seemed like in the past day or two. Hopefully it's to what we were all hoping it was going to be, to a more local ownership. That seems the way it's going. There's, it was very visible where individuals was there at the match last night. We also had Sunday morning Ali Poor coming out and saying that he is not interested in buying Dundalk Football Club. Is that a smokescreen for, he's no longer in consideration? It's like, well, we weren't looking for it in the first place. It's schoolyard stuff. I don't know. But it seemed to be really heading in one direction now, would you say?
Yeah, there's obviously something that's kind of kick-started over the weekend, I suppose. There's obviously something can maybe come about, maybe middle of last week, late last week. I think them distance themselves, the Ali Poor group. I doubt they've no interest in buying the Dundalk Football Club. I mean, their name doesn't get banded about for nothing. But maybe, like you said, it's gone maybe too far down the road with the other consortium, the local based one. So to save face, he just says, "No, lads, it's the usual." But
it's never looking for it.
Yeah, like, I mean, go by last night. Last night just seemed to be not a rumor, but it seemed to be almost right. This is happening. Now we don't know this, so this is just all. Yeah. Again, it's hearsay at the minute, but it just seemed over the last maybe 24 hours, it seemed to take a different tone, and it's looking like it's going to be a local takeover. Now, again, we can't confirm, we don't know, but by the people, and if you check out a certain photographer's pictures from last night as well, you'll see some certain familiar faces in them, but it seems to be all, and nobody seems to be saying that it's not happening. There's no so for Quentin at Bar last night as well. There was a bit of rumours, a bit of talking going around. We weren't there, just in case anybody thinks that's why the podcast is happening. We weren't.
Yeah.
But, no, it seems to be all, hopefully it's just a matter of time now. That's, and that's what we've been looking for. Not that we're anti anybody else coming in, but I think with the way the club is at the minute, I think the best thing for, provided, you want the best. I know another podcast, you want the best people in for a job, absolutely. But the best people that would be a locally owned business company that have a business model, that have been there before. We don't know, but that's what we're looking for. It's ideal for everybody, and I think it's only a matter of time now before an announcement comes, hopefully.
Yeah, in a bizarre twist of fate for these early mornings ones, Pingu, what time are you in Chicago?
It's 5:30 in the morning.
Oh,
you're waking up to the Town End podcast instead of your alarm, is it?
Exactly, yeah. It's like the strawberry alarm clock.
I thought we were going to pretend it's Sunday. London's born and starting here on my telly. Last week, though.
Believe it or not, this season I've been in 2 different cars. I've been in 2 different sitting rooms, and now I'm doing the podcast live from an exercise bike, lads.
This is the stage exercise bike that's been in the background that we all wondered if you actually were using. So we can now confirm this.
It's not a painting on the wall.
Pingu, we were only just saying that it seemed like last night a more solid step towards local ownership seems to be happening. If you were to take a rain check or a vibe off the feeling around Oriel Park last night, from what you're hearing, is that something similar?
Yeah, social media seems to be saying that. And I mean, if you look at the little collage that Kieran Culligan put together after the game, I saw the Mitchell brothers down in the bottom right-hand corner, you know. So, and Andy Mitchell looking at the camera as it's being took was very like a scary sight, wasn't it? But now you'd be hoping now, seeing the two of them there, it almost came across like it was a statement, didn't it? You know, they were there. It was. Not to say they were doing it for show, but it kind of feels like it's them just kind of marking their territory. I seen someone post that, you know, and you'd be a little bit more hopeful now that there's light at the end of the tunnel, and hopefully, again, as I say, we've got almost 2 weeks of a break before the next game. Could there be new owners in before the end of the season, which might get us a couple more players signed or something? Before that too is something you'd hope for,
because that's the real worry, that, you know, with no real timeline of or statement of intent from any one ownership, this could have dragged on for quite some time. And Gally, what ends up happening then is players think to themselves, well, I got to find a club somewhere. I'm going to sign with somebody else. I can't stay in hope that Dundalk are going to offer me something. So if this meant that we could hold on and keep some sort of nucleus of this current squad together, it could be the best thing ever for the club.
Yeah, and that was always the worry, that, you know, players have to look after themselves. I mean, it's not like I know people play FIFA, but there's no millionaires in the League of Ireland playing football. Some of these boys are part-time. You know, not all boys, but I mean, there is a lot of clubs. So you got to look after yourself, your families. You know, like Vinny was saying, Christmas coming up and stuff. It's expensive time of the year, and you can't. But if they knew right in a month we're going to have a contract for you, you know, let's have that conversation with them. They don't need to sign it straight after the deadline or the final whistle next Friday. But if they know, they'll hang on if they know. And familiar faces like the people in the photos, I don't want to be saying too many names just in case, but they might be able to get talking to these lads. Look, I was here before. We know each other. Let's just to hang on so long. We're looking to sign you, and that might be all that they need. You might need ink on paper just yet, but if they know what's coming down the line, like there's players. Like that squad last night, if that squad goes out every week next season, that 11 and plays in front of the home fans, well, you're back right up. You're right up there in the top 3 in the league, in my opinion. Like that's as good as we have at the minute. It's as good as we've had probably since Kenny. You know, obviously we're not going to have Mickey Duffy. You know, Fat didn't play last night, but I mean, if you can sign the nucleus of that squad last night, you don't fear anything next year, because I think with the crowds back, we've seen in the last 7 matches. I think there's a stat up last night. I can't remember what it was. I think it's unbeaten at home. What,
7 home games, yeah.
And then like it's 4 clean sheets for Cherry and 6, something like that in Oriel Park. Is that correct? I could be wrong. I might be reading it wrong. But look, the crowd make a massive difference, and that team in front of that crowd. Now, obviously, when we go away, it's different, but they've still got fans. You got to be. There's certain players who, like we said last week, there's certain players who you'd be looking them to speak to straight out the gate. Where you can't sign another Sean Murray. You know, there is nobody available at a decent price. So, you know, sign him. You already have him. You know, Dunwigan can play both full back sides. You know, it's another player you got to sign. Plays with 2 feet. Absolutely. Like, there's certain players that kind of sign themselves. Cleary's another one I think that would probably, I think he'd like to stay. I don't envisage anybody else coming in, you know, he'd have to go, in my opinion, he'd have to go down a level, you know, in club, I mean. But, look at, you know, these lads hopefully can have a chat with these boys over the next couple of weeks, and they know each other personally from days gone, and you know that's all you're looking for. You know, there's a deadline. A couple of weeks into November, we're going to have you signed. That's all they're looking for, just clarity. Or even if they're not being signed, Just let them know.
Donald was looking to give a shout out to the taxi driver who brought him home last night, but can't actually remember his name. So he said, shout out to the taxi driver. I hope this doesn't go as payment, Donald, to your taxi, by the way. we can't even remember who he added it.
Yeah.
It's bizarre. Pingu, we were saying earlier on that in a weird twist of fate this season, that to still have a carrot dangling for European football is amazing. They're possibly going into the end of the season that we still stand a chance on something, isn't it?
Oh, it's nuts. I was looking at straight after the match at the permutations of how it all could go, and it's just mad, isn't it? It's would we have said 2-3 weeks ago that Europe? 2 weeks ago, would we even have said Europe was still a possibility? I know statistically it was, but would we have believed it? And now here we are with one game to go, and I know the other teams have too, but
yeah,
the fact that we could still get Europe is just mad, and it would cap off a mental season for Dundalk FC, wouldn't it?
Yeah,
that we went through probably a good close to a half a season worrying about relegation, and yet we make Europe on the last day of the year. It would just be mental, but it would be a good starting point for new ownership next year. That there's European football there, because it will attract players. As you were saying there, you would hope you would keep the nucleus of the team. I think I said on the last podcast, I think with new owners coming in, if they were able to say to some of these lads, look, we'll give you a 1-year extension, but you get paid through Christmas, I think some of these lads would sign. You were talking earlier, I heard when Donald was on, I think it was Gally, you were talking about Hubin, and he's 2 goals off his 100 goals and breaking the record for the club. I mean, imagine telling him, we want you not just to beat that record, we want you to blitz it next season. We want you to get another 20 goals. And it's kind of like Robbie Keane with the Irish team. I was thinking, like, who's ever going to come close to that in our lifetime? And I know the chances of someone beating Hoban's record if he gets to 100 on Friday week is slim to none in our lifetime. But I mean, it could happen. But if he gets another 20 goals next year, what's the chances of someone getting 120 goals over the next 50 years? Like, it's not something you would envision. So for players like him, I mean, the likes of Andy Mitchell or Martin Mitchell, because I don't want to give away names or anything here, but I feel like these lads might be able to. They might be able to, like, they know these players, as you said, because they've been in the club before, and they might be able to have these conversations off the record and say, once this goes through, we want to keep you, and we want, like, you want to motivate. Like I've said, obviously, just referencing Hubin again, I've said earlier in the season, I think he's a player. I don't think he's necessarily motivated by money. I think he's motivated by, people.
A record like that.
Yeah, because I've heard rumours that he wants to stick around to beat that record. Like, he would be disappointed to leave and not have beaten that. But I think if you said to him, like, you're not going to be a great player until you score another 20 next year, he'd probably take that to heart. Like, that might be something that would keep him, just as you say. I think it was Donald was saying there, when you see how frustrating he might be as a teammate, that kind of way, that he's a highly motivated player. And I feel like something like that is to say, all right, we want you to blitz that record. That would be motivation enough, I would think, to keep him. I mean, the money factor would play a part, but I think something like that there, I think we've got to where we are over the last 7-8 years from having motivated players, not driven by money, they're driven by success. And hopefully, it's a long answer to your question about Europe, Chris, but hopefully that chance of getting Europe would be enough, as I say, to keep those players and give them that extra motivation to stick around for another year.
Yeah. Of course, our 4th-place European place all hangs on a former skipper pulling off a miracle at the Aviva too. So, there's a fair few twists and turns still to come in this, like you say, Pingu, with certain games still to be played. People have a match ahead of us too, plus you're waiting on the outcome of an FAI Cup final. So that there's a lot still hanging in there to see what we can get out of the season, but to be not looking into oblivion of nothing to play for, to still having an outside opportunity. I think we'll all grasp that with 2 hands and say, let's go into the last game with something to fight for. And like you say, Gally, at that stage, we don't know what would happen with ownership. So you could have lads saying, I have a meeting with possible new owners tomorrow or next week. I'm going to put on a real show for them here, like I have over the past, few games here, as you can see, the improvement in performance to show them that I'm worth a new contract here. And that's pretty much what you'd be hoping for, isn't it?
Exactly, yeah. Like, it's, and like we said earlier, like the benefit now for these players is it might give them that little bit of motivation to really go at Derry in the last game, because they know, right, well, we know Martin Mitchell and Andy Mitchell, as Dean put it. We know these boys. Like, like Dean was saying, off the record, they can have this chat and it can act as a complete mood booster. Like, they've now got 2 weeks off to really, like, it's like a cup. This is the cup final now. This is bigger than what we played in the last number of seasons, because if we get you, even if we don't get Europe, it's not a bad end to the season. But if we manage to scrape in by the luck of, I don't know what we want to call it, but imagine the players you could attract. We become a much more attractive proposition then, and that's that's what it's all about at the end of the day. You got to keep these. Like, why would someone sign for Damien Duff Shelbourne when you can play European football at Oriel Park? Now, Oriel Park, the pitch is debatable. We're hoping that might get sorted out with the new owners. But yeah, it's got to be a positive for these players. It's got to be a mood lifter. It's got to boost their self-esteem. You seen it last night. Sam Stanton last night as well. And I know he's mentioned Murray and Human. Sam Stanton covered every inch of midfield last night. Like, his tackling was just unbelievable. And like, that's another player that you'd be looking at to come in and stay next season, because where do you go and get a Sam Stanton in the League of Ireland? Where do you find these? I don't get me wrong, I'll hold my hands up. I hammered him at the start of the season. I thought he was one of the most unfittest player I think I've ever seen in Oriel Park. But he's an unbelievable central midfielder, really, really top class. But to go and replace them, then you're back to square one, offering big money, to get players in, because people know, there's a consortium after going in there, they've loads of money. I'm going to hit them for everything they have. You don't want that.
Yeah.
Let's get the nooks and the crannies down. Let's get the main players that we want to keep, get them sorted, or even a viable agreement before the end of the season, ideally, so they know what's happening going into the final game of the season. Or if you're not signing them, tell them they're not being signed. Let's just put it to bed and let them, because they've lives, they've bills to pay, food to put on the table.
Exactly. Pingu, we're going to kind of fast track this now and say in the next few weeks that perhaps we get some sort of movement on the ownership on the ground in Oriel Park, taken away from the playing side for the moment. What would you like to see from new owners? If there was somewhat of a blank canvas that you could operate on, what do you think we've missed out on, say, over the past season that we need to bring back? What sort of qualities? What sort of improvements?
I suppose the community engagement, and a lot of it, in fairness to the owners, been out of their hands with COVID and stuff. But I think they have to engage with the community again and bring back stuff. And I think the last big community thing they had was at the Temple Street Hospital jersey. Do more stuff like that. Bring back the Fife videos. Like, the Fife videos, especially for me out in America, like, they've been a highlight over the last 5-6 years since I've been out here. Bring back little things like that, and like, one thing obviously with the 1903, like, engage with your supporters as well. I think that's the biggest thing, and that's been missing for a long time, is you want that fan engagement. Obviously, in terms of the appearance of Oriel, look, we all want ground improvements. That's obviously what we all want. I see someone just saying there about a grass pitch. I think you would hope from the word that we've heard from potential new owners, from Clat Sports, that they're talking about, putting in a grass pitch. So you would hope that's coming. I mean, again, I'll just make this point before I don't want to be jammering on. I know you feel that's how it's. Yeah, I'm sweating down, boys. But I think when I talk about this engaging with the 1903, I think this is a good opportunity if local owners come in. Every supporter for the last number of years has been saying about nothing's been done to Oriel. Let's improve Oriel Park. Yeah. This is an opportunity now. And I said this at the beginning before 1903 was set up. All the money that they raise, go to the new owners and say, we want to invest that in the infrastructure of Oriel Park and making improvements to Oriel Park. Will you match it? Will you put more money in? But will you at least match the ambition for that with us?
Yeah.
And let's start seeing bit by bit, brick by brick. Let's start seeing improvements to Oriel over the next 5 years. You know, and it doesn't have to be. We're not going to get new stands all in a season, but do it bit by bit and work hand in hand with the community to get that done. That, I think, for me, that's the biggest thing. I think this is a chance now, maybe sacrifice a little bit of the success on the field or on the pitch and start making long-term improvements to Oriel Park, because that's what's going to get that quality of player into the club. And that's what, because you're going to get more supporters in the ground, which means there's going to be more money long-term to pay for quality players. So that's what I'd like to see.
Yeah. Gally?
Yeah, it's echo that, and it's got to start, like Damien McGraw put up. It's got to start with the actual surface, the pitch. For me, how many players have been put off signing Oriel Park? We know we've heard Ronan Finn debated it for weeks and weeks to sign it. I know we'll come back.
Yeah,
you know, old players, but how many players don't want to play at Oriel Park because of the surface? You know, and it looks awful at the minute. I don't know what the work goes into that's involved in it, but it looks awful. It looks really old and dingy but yeah, grass is the minimum. Obviously, look at fans. Dundalk fans are very patient. There's no more patient fans in the country than Dundalk fans, because we've had the same stadium for years. You know, it hasn't changed.
Yeah.
I mean, the YDC, there's been a new shed put up, but it's still a shed. You know, like it's not. There's no. It's not really. It's, for me, it's definitely about the pitch, because I think that the infrastructure, the training facilities, the pitch is vital to players. Players will play in front of any crowd. You know, they don't need a top class stand as such, but that's down the line. The minimum for me is the pitch. The pitch has to go. It's like we're bad out with injuries, and I have fears of players using it as an excuse not to sign for Oriel Park, and you don't want that. And I think that how many players, we don't know, but how many players would we have missed out on not having? If Stephen Kenny wasn't the manager, you know, how many players would not have signed for Oriel Park over the seasons? So I think the pitch is the minimum for me. If they do nothing else, if they do nothing else, play on the grass pitch.
I think one of the other things was fairly telling about last night was, you know, although the atmosphere was fantastic and there was plenty of noise, the shed and whoever the guys over that side who were previously lighting off fireworks and that seemed to have eased. How much of that's come down to the Waterford Shamrock Rovers match, do we wonder? That, I mean, that incident alone was ridiculous. But have we seen a bit of sense here that perhaps we need to come up with, if we're to do that needs to be done in a safe way, that inside an enclosed shed is probably not the environment where there's no ventilation or anything for it. But at the same time, we still need to be creating that hostile atmosphere as well that we find intimidating. So I just thought it was good just to see that everyone had heed that warning. I did see, you know, guards walking around, and by half time they'd walk back out again. It was clearly there was no need for anybody there. It was a far cry from nearly stop and search that we had seen in previous weeks. So I think that's good to see that was all heeded. We're going to be down to one episode left, and I suppose it'll be one that we'll be able to reflect back on and at different parts of it. There'll be some highlights for us all, and I would say that, you know, Pingo will probably dropping this one in now, but I'm thinking that we should probably have a little review of the season that was and think about our best goals and player that we most enjoyed watching and stuff like that. So we might put up a post during, you know, a couple of days before that show and get people's vibe on that too, if that's all right, and see what they think. I'm assuming everyone's going to be right there for Fat's goal probably in the Netherlands that night, because it was hard to match. But at least we've got plenty of good performances since then that we could talk about too. But in a roller coaster season, I have a funny feeling when we sit down, you know, Pingu, to think about highlights of this season. When we think back to anything, back to President's Cup at the start of the year, it's going to seem like a lifetime ago, isn't it?
Yeah, it's, as I say, it's a proper roller coaster of a season, isn't it? Because we've had probably the lowest lows we've had in the best part of 10 years, but then there's been some, like, you take out the Europa League last year, but we've had like really good highs in Europe again this season, you know. So it's a mad season. And then, like, I think we discussed last week, didn't we, about Player of the Year awards. It's all up because nobody's been consistently good all season. everyone's been consistent in little spits and spats. So that's interesting. I think we should probably reach out to Tony and see if he's willing to give away 2 pizzas for the last episode, one for the goal of the season, and one for the player of the year. Yeah, maybe a chicken fillet box for the player of the season. But yeah, no, it has the President's Cup. I mean, we came on the first episode and we thought we were going to piss the league, and it couldn't have been more wrong. And after the President's
I think we'll have to
Cup,
dig that episode out and just pick all our expectations for the season and see what we said and just laugh at ourselves.
Yeah, that was the only episode we had any good quotes as well. So I think we had t-shirts made after that episode and everything. But it's been nuts. Like, could we do a manager of the season for Dundalk? Because we've had 4.
That's what Davey McGurk said. Dundalk Manager of the Year award, maybe.
I don't know who'd get it. That's the problem.
Gally, it's been a crazy one though, hasn't it? Like, it's when you think about a voyage through Europe, a flirtation with relegation, expectations so high at the start of the year, catastrophic injuries, catastrophic decisions off the field, probably not helping anything. It's just could go on and on.
It's one of those years that when Pingu contacted me to set up when we started, when you were on about doing the podcast, do you want to get involved? Yeah, I said a weekly podcast would be grand. And then when we weren't doing it, because there was apparently 1,000 podcasts, and I said, this is good. Like, it's not going to be worth it. There's not going to be, but we've probably picked the best year in a way to start a podcast like this, because we've had so much to talk about. It's like, if we were winning every week, it'd probably be, people probably zone out listening to us. Like, we've people listening to us now. I mean, it mightn't be many, but we're on. Yeah. And people were texting us last night when we weren't on. Like, my phone was hopping last night. Oh, you're not on, you aren't on, where are you? So we've done nothing else. We've engaged people, and that's what it's all about. But it's been one of those years that's just, we couldn't have been lost for content. We had so much content. Like, we have stuff we didn't mention. Like, we could make podcasts off stuff we didn't bring up, that we weren't allowed to bring up.
We weren't allowed to bring up, probably.
We didn't label ourselves, it's just crazy. But yeah, look, it's been a mental season. Mental. Like, I mean, what are we, 48 podcasts. Yeah. So, like, for anybody that's counting, the cup final would have been our 50th. We had this, we had it all thought out, and it just didn't pan out at all. But it's been just mental. And look, if it finishes, like, if you thought it's like we have the sniff of European football. Like Rossi said it. Rossi was on a couple weeks ago and said we're not getting European football. And we were we won't get it now. But now we have this little snippet of hope. And look, if any team's going to do it, it's us. But like,
you look at the form guide of the other 2 teams, you would say.
Oh, absolutely, yeah. And like, it's a pity it's 2 weeks away. It's a pity we have to wait. But look, the anticipation, it's going to be an interesting next couple of days with the takeover. It's going to be done, but it's been a mad season.
It could be a weird twist at the end if we end up in a takeover and it is, and if that gets pushed through and it is a local consortium which does get it. Far cry from the protests at the end of not caring and to go back into local hands again. It's just off the field, probably mirrors the fields at times.
And then the process starts of what did they do with the coaching? So what happens? They obviously know Vinny. Did they go? What it starts again. Players are most important at the minute, but you need someone to. You're going to have to look at the coach and say, right, well, do you want these players? Yeah. Like, I mean, where do you go? So it'll be interesting. It's an interesting couple of weeks. There's no kind of warming. There's no honeymoon period for this takeover. These boys are going to be flat out straight. Like, they're going to have to cancel Christmas. God love them. They'll be busy.
Don't tell the kids. Look, I think it's all just been it's been a crazy one and summed up nothing more. Like, we've touched on it once or twice there, but just the table currently as it stands. So, like, with Sligo's couple of victories, they sealed their European football only a couple of days ago on 56 points, and then Bows, Derry and ourselves all 48 points, 4th down to 6th is a bizarre. And even Drogheda, 4 points behind us on 44. They're now looking over their shoulders, pending on other results for Harps and Waterford, whether they're pulled back into this relegation playoff battle that's happening there as well. So it's it's a real strange season that probably teams that didn't think they were going to get involved in things ended up getting involved in it. It's going to go down to the wire to the last few games before we think. And I suppose it's funny because, you know, on LOI Central, when the representative from RT was on and saying that, you know, it's a runaway with the league or whatever, I don't remember coming down to there's still European places up for grabs. There's still relegation up for grabs. There's a hell of a story to tell in this league over this current season. And we're part of that story too, you know, and how that has gone. And there is, for people who aren't engaged with this league, there's stories to be told all over it, and none more so than this year. So I hope the fact, and Pingu, this probably comes back to you a little bit more than anything. Yeah. You know, we're not.
Kelly, you losing Chris there?
I am. He's gone.
Do you want to ask me a question there in his place?
He's I don't know what Rudy was going to do.
You're back there now, I think.
There he is.
Just thinking with LOI TV, Pingu, not confirmed for next year for overseas, what does that mean for you?
Back to scorelive.com. No, you'd be hoping. Look, I'd hope. I was thinking about this yesterday when I was watching the match. When I got the second half of it, you know, you'd be hoping that for overseas fans. I mean, there's people watching it that never watched League of Ireland before as well. Like people just. One good thing that's came out of the pandemic is all this content. You know, content is king. I mean, I seen someone talking about all the Dundalk podcasts as well, including our own. But in terms of LOI TV, I mean, I'll be gutted if I can't watch the games. You would be hopeful that if it doesn't go ahead, that the clubs will be given the green light to stream games of their own. I think Dundalk FC would be one of the clubs that would be able to do that at a relative ease, at least a home game. So if I was missing away games, I could live with it. You know what I mean? As long as I could get the home games on a Friday or every other Friday, I'd be happy enough. But it's look, it's been a great service, and it would be a real shame if it doesn't continue beyond next year. Yeah.
And Gali, it's even for, you know, like we've seen so many fixture changes and everything else that, you know, Monday night games switch or Tuesday nights, and even the Drogs match there on a Thursday, people coming home for work, it doesn't always suit everybody. But to know you can always just log on and still be able to watch the game and follow it all, it's been an absolute godsend.
Oh, like it's massive, and it's like, I mean, things like even just talking about the game, like, I mean, don't get me wrong, the radio is great, Adrian Taff for all games, but to be able to have a visual of the matches, considering that we're not, like, a lot of people won't go to Oriel Park still, you know, like yes, it was my first match, you know, still wary of going up, and a lot of people might be like that for some of next season as well. You just don't know. So that kind of having that outlet for people is, you know, you couldn't, like, I know people give out about the price. I'm probably one of them giving out, you know, you've got a season ticket for the club and you're paying for this and that. But look, it's a godsend. Like, I mean, if like, what else should you be doing with it? It's well spent money. I mean, obviously the stream can be in and out on some of the away pitches. Obviously, the Dundalk was always perfect, Chris. But it depends what you get on the day. Some of them are a bit iffy, but look, it's better than nothing, I suppose. Now, sometimes, in fairness, sometimes it's not better than nothing because some of it has been shocking. But it's a massive outlet, and like, you know, it gives us an opportunity. Like if you know, stuff like us podcast, if we were doing live podcasts, if we couldn't watch it, like this podcast wouldn't be happening. You know, like, so, you know, to have that outlet of watching it, people wouldn't have to come on and log on and listen to us idiots talking. But it's it's massive, and it's got to, you know, if that doesn't make people kind of want it more or kind of put a bit of backing into it, like you've seen TG Cahill with the lady soccer, the WNL as well. Yeah, you know, they've got to come up with something here. You know, it's otherwise it'll never improve. The infrastructure will never improve because that's what it's one big melting pot, and that it has to be looked at. And like, if nothing else came out of the pandemic, like Pingu said, content, it's been huge. It's been massive for League of Ireland, who's been left behind for years. Like what will we get? Maybe half a dozen games a season before this on telly, and you know, you get 5.
And I think with Air Sport going and stuff like that as well, you're thinking it's one less broadcaster in the mix as well. So
Yeah.
if we're creating our own and we're doing our own, you're guaranteed live match every single week. Like you say, Ping, whether it's home or away, at least there's been something you could watch this year. So that's a bit of difference. Look, gents, thanks everybody for popping on. Thanks for Donald before that. Thanks for Pingu on the exercise bike this early in the morning. You would definitely not have me up at that hour. I can tell you here. Gally, thanks as well. Thanks everybody for tuning in and comments today. We really didn't think we would have anything. We weren't even going to go live. So thanks for that too. Thanks everybody for all season long too, for comments and getting involved. Which one of you want to end tonight? I'll leave it open to you two for an end tonight.
Go on,
or this morning. What am I at tonight?
It's tonight. Heartbeats on. You don't hear music in the background. I don't know what.
Glenn Road out a sec.
I don't know how you'd end it. I don't really know how you'd end it. I don't know. One game to go. I don't know. You're hopefully European nights back in Oriel.
I'll do the Mitchell brothers. Sling your hook. Peak 6. Sling your hook.